Good morning. Welcome. Council is convened for a couple of work sessions this morning, February 5th, 2025. First off will be community development, followed by, do I have that backwards? Do I have that right? And then we'll be followed with community planning overview. So April, please kick us off.
Okay, good. Good morning, Council. I'm going to take you through a condensed version of what community development provides and answer any questions you may have. So my first slide, if you want to go to the next one, is community development's org chart. A note here is that I have 3 managers that manage more than one program. So Mark Hess is our building official. He manages the building inspectors, the plan review manager, and the manager of weatherization. Brent Davis manages land use review and wetland habitat programs. And Donna Goddard is our fire marshal. She manages code enforcement, the animal protection and control manager, and of course, the fire marshal office. Okay. As you can see on the next slide, community development consists of 110 employees, 3 general fund programs, 11 planning and code fund programs, and 1 admin and grant fund management. We regulate 7 different Clark County Code sections. You can see our goals here, but the big picture and everything we do is to continuously improve customer service and communication. I am a firm believer that the best service we can provide is faster timelines. And so we're always looking for ways to improve our processes. Now I'm going to go through each program and what they review and approve. So first is land use. I'm going to try to present this in the order that most projects come into the county. So our first is our land use program, where we review and approve based on requirements in Clark County Title 40. This is where you would start to permit your business, subdivide your property, or develop a land subdivision. We have brand new state reporting requirements this year for land use and so this will be an interesting year for us. But a note here is that all of our timelines already established in Clark County Code meet or exceed the state's timeline requirements under the new Senate Bill 5290. So we didn't have to make any changes like other jurisdictions did. I mean, we had to make changes, we have to report it, but we didn't have to make changes to our timelines. What council can expect from land use is us seeking direction and then approval of when we propose biannual code updates, which will consist of Scrivener errors, small policy changes, and the correcting of code inconsistencies. When we get into a request from public for larger code changes, those go through long-range planning under a Type 4 process. Next is development engineering. They review engineering applications to make sure they meet Title 40 code requirements and engineering standards. They're looking at the whole project, from technical aspects like stormwater, frontage improvements, and applying the road and street standards to new developments. Development engineering will be conducting some fee work to present to council later this year. Their fees have not been reviewed or adjusted since 2011. They also are often part of the biannual code updates. The development engineering team and I have a meeting later today with the state auditor. They will be my next program to go through the voluntary process audit to help us realize process improvements. This is the second one of my programs to go in the last 6 months. Land use went through the process in November, and we're working on those recommendations now. Next is wetland habitat. It's pretty self-explanatory, it's in the name, but the work that these biologists do is very field intensive and requires our staff to have expertise in botany, soil science, hydrology, fish and wildlife biology, and ecology. Staff identifies, maps, and assesses wetlands and priority habitats, reviews and approves technical studies and mitigation plans prepared by consultants, develops mitigation plans for residential building permits, and provides expert testimony in land use hearings. The biologists also provide customer service and attend pre-app conferences. This staff also works with and creates partnerships with many other government entities like the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, Ecology, the Department of Natural Resources, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on individual development and mitigation projects, as well as mitigation banking efforts in Clark County. The Fire Marshal's office is next. They just moved last week from the Sheriff's office on 179th to the Dolly Building here downtown, next to Animal Protection and Control and Code Enforcement offices. So Donna now has them all together. The Fire Marshal's office performs fire and life safety inspections on existing and new businesses. They also conduct fire investigations to determine origin and cause. They are part of the building permit process where they review fire permits, like fire sprinklers, fire alarms, smoke detection, propane tanks, and fire access gates. They also review under the land use application process to ensure proposed projects support emergency efforts in accordance with the fire code requirements. And they review and approve special event permits and firework permits. You will see them twice this year, updating Title 15, which is our Clark County Fire Code. And the Fire Marshal's office also does a firework presentation each year for council, where we go over fires and calls related to firework sales for the 4th of July holiday week. We now have the Permit Center. The Permit Center performs the intake and processing of building permits, residential and commercial. The permit tech and permit tech assistants also perform some of the reviews for these permits, which is a little different than most jurisdictions. They review ag exemption reviews, zoning reviews, and final review for all commercial building permits. They also facilitate the LEAN program, which is the program we have for production builders. This program gets single-family new home construction buildings out in 5 days. Faster than any other jurisdiction, just saying. We issued 983 new home construction permits last year, 529 of them, or 54%, being from this LEAN program. The Permit Center has consistently been 4 weeks or under for first review comments on all building permits in 2024, meaning that if the submittal was thorough, you could have your building permit in 4 weeks. Right now, they're at 1 week, 6 days. They give me a recap every single week of where they're at. The Building Safety Program reviews and inspects all construction projects that require building permits in the unincorporated areas of Clark County. These projects range from small-scale residential remodels to large multi-story commercial buildings and apartments. You will see them later this year, or later this month, actually, in a work session to go over updates to Title 14, our building code as it relates to Washington State adopted building codes. We also will be conducting a fee study after development engineering and present that to council this year. Also, our plan is after all departments look at their fees that they haven't looked at since 2011, we plan on bringing that to council annually so you can assess that. The weatherization program under the building safety umbrella is free to qualified low-income homeowners and renters, provides energy efficient and indoor air quality improvements for single-family, multifamily, and mobile homes. This program really does save lives. We get really beautiful letters about what this program does for residents of Clark County. It's really amazing. Next is Clark County Code Enforcement. They respond to citizen complaints regarding building, zoning, land use, and nuisance code violations. Benefits of code enforcement include safer, more attractive neighborhoods, greater community pride, and higher property values. We also do have complaints that don't result in violations, so we recommend mediation services as an alternative to resolving these neighborhood issues. Next is Animal Protection and Control. Domestic animals enrich the lives of many county citizens. However, if not cared for properly, these animals also can be disruptive to a neighborhood. So Animal Protection and Control can help resolve animal control problems such as stray, running at large, or vicious animals, and animal-related emergencies and reports of animal cruelty, all of which have had significant increases in the last 3 years. Community development has a small but mighty financial team that prepares and monitors our annual and supplemental budgets, forecasting and monitoring fund balance for Fund 1011 only. We have another group that does our general fund piece, maintaining and updating program fees, ad hoc financial analysis, and general accounting. And then our last team is our admin team. This is the group that coordinates and produces our Learning Lab series. We just completed our first year of Learning Labs. It is a monthly training performed on the third Thursday of every month where one program from community development creates and presents a topic to help customers understand the services we provide and how to better navigate our codes and systems. We just completed our first year, and this team has already strategically planned our topics and schedule for 2025. Community development admin also performs most of our public records requests, with over 694 happening in 2024. They also coordinate and produce our web publications, informational reports, and other published materials for consistency throughout ComDev and the county and Clarity. This team also provides internal and external customer service for our permitting and plan review software, mostly external. So if anyone's having issues navigating, we have 2 FTEs that support the customers who need help navigating our permitting system. And then this last slide is just to prepare you for what you will see from ComDev this year and examples of non-mandated or non-fee work that we provide to the public. So every program has a general phone line and email where they field customer requests and questions daily. Many programs, like the Permit Center, needs to provide 40 hours a week to this task. As I said in the slide above, public records requests are huge and we cannot charge for that service. And then public outreach, which is very important to us. And that's all I have. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Council, are there any questions? Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I have a couple of comments. First of all, thank you so much for this great presentation. It was very clear. I love the significant number of clear goals that you presented, that you and your team have established. And I want to just kind of point out a few key words that I heard in your presentation consistently. Really being focused on customer centricity, timelines, efficiency, streamlining processes, doing outreach to our community, and education, which are essential to ensuring that our customers are well served, our community members are well served. So thank you for that. I really, really enjoyed the objectives that you set for your team. They seem aggressive, I'm pretty sure, but also realistic. So thank you for caring about our community members.
Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Couple of questions. Thank you. Good to see you again. So we touched on code enforcement really quickly, and I'm sure we all do, but I know for a fact that I get emails all the time on both sides of the spectrums. Why aren't you guys enforcing this? Why are you guys enforcing this? This is so ridiculous. So how do you find that balance? And is our code enforcement essentially complaint driven, or do we do any investigations on our own, or if we see something glaring, we'll address it when the inspectors are driving by? Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, first I would say I don't do that balance. Donna does, and she does a really great job, and her team. So yes, we're complaint driven mostly. I would say when a building inspector, our building inspectors have areas. When they're in their area, if they see work being done, they look and see if there is a permit associated with it, because they know their areas pretty well. So they know if they've been there for their first inspection. They will first try to not do the code enforcement thing and knock on the door and say, hey, you need a permit for this. Most of the time that works. That person gets a permit, we're good to go. When it doesn't work, they do need to turn that into code enforcement. There are commercial buildings. When commercial buildings, anytime the public is going to be in that building that's not familiar with that building, and we find a violation, we have to do something. So unfortunately, if we were out to dinner somewhere and we see that they're blocking their emergency exits, we're going to have to say something to code enforcement, because as a county employee, we saw it and it's dangerous. We have to do something about it. Those are also rare. There's one other way. So customer complaints, building inspectors or county employees. Those are extremely rare. The only other time is if we are wetland habitat can go out to a property and do their normal inspection and see a violation. They also can't ignore the violation if they see a wetland habitat violation. But I would say 90% of them are customer driven.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Just a couple things real quick. I'm just really quickly, I'm interested in the nature of all of the public records requests. What are people asking for?
Everything. It ranges. It's, I don't even think I could describe it. There's one, well, I don't know if I want to. They could be, a lot has to do with hot topics that happen, like when we had the knife ripper. There's a lot of all of our communications, all of my communications
Gotcha.
about that PVGR. But
Okay.
then they can just even be a topic that came up in the public hearing and a customer wants to know, or a citizen wants to know more about it.
Okay.
Permits that happen, they want to know all the process that we went through permits, especially if they're trying to understand why a subdivision was allowed in their neighborhood or on their street.
Great.
It's very broad,
Okay. Thank you. It's just
especially for
learn-
me, because I have all these different programs that seem unrelated.
All right. It's interesting to see what the public is interested in. Just wanted to say, love the learning labs. Those are huge. And I appreciate the intent that you have to be able to navigate people that are not trained professionals through the system. I think that is really critical. The system has become so egregious now that it's so horribly expensive just to be in business now that everything is so expensive. So it's really nice that homeowners that may be on a tight budget have the ability to navigate the system and try to do some things on their own. I really appreciate that. And then also 1 week, 6 days, is that for lien or was that for all of them?
That is their average right now for all permits. Now that's to first review. So
Review.
if you've never done it
everything's
before,
perfect,
right,
it'll
if-
get approved after first review.
right. So a homeowner doing something on their own, it might take them through 2 reviews.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And even some professionals, it still might take 2.
Right. Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, we have checklists out there. You follow the checklist.
Yes. It
But-
is difficult to get a whole package perfect. I know that, not from our experience here in Clark County, but more in the city of Vancouver. Okay, so that is fantastic. I mean, I cannot say enough about that. That is great.
Thank you.
Time is money. So really appreciate all the work that you're doing. Appreciate that customer service focus that you brought to the department. Thank you.
I'm a citizen of Clark County too, so I want it to be easier.
Yep.
Okay, Counselor Little, your hand's up.
Thanks. This is wonderful. I love to see this as well. It's just really impressive. I guess for the public, I'd just love you to repeat about the permit turnaround time and just so everyone can understand what kind of permits we're talking about. Can you kind of explain a little bit about what the building permits are, what your goals are, what your turnaround time is, what are standards set in law? Would just love to hear where we compare to other counties.
Building permits do not have time in code. It's one of the ones that doesn't. My land use and development engineering, those are all in code, but building does not, which is interesting that it's faster. But getting a permit, and a permit can be a building permit for a new home construction. It could be a deck. It could be a commercial building or an apartment. I mean, in those timelines, we put those all together. The only thing that I take out for reporting services is new home construction, because that's the area we try to improve on the most. They're the least complicated compared to a commercial building or a multifamily building. And I mean, I would say when I talk to other jurisdictions, we're by far the fastest. And we do more than every other jurisdiction. I mean, the city of Vancouver just reported how many new home constructions they did, and it was nowhere near 983. And we've been pretty consistent over the last 5 years of the new home construction permits that we have. Every 3 years it goes up because you're in a code cycle and people try to get their permits in before that code cycle. But in general, it's around 1,000 a year. And ours don't decrease like I have seen other jurisdictions do. And they're smaller, and so I understand. But to build a process, and I'm very passionate about the Permit Center. If you don't know, that's where I started. So to build a process and then to bring in another manager behind me that just improves the process even more, I think is pretty outstanding. And it's with things that you wouldn't even think about. So when I was in the Permit Center, I had like 9 permit techs and 5 permit tech assistants. The new manager now has even made the improvements that she's done, because now we have 9 permit techs and 5 permit tech assistants. So she doesn't have the same turnover that even I had, and that's improving the timelines. And then we analyze and say, what can we do faster so other permits don't end up in the queue? Because all the permits you put in the queue slow down the timeline. And so we're even trying to identify, we just had a new building permit type come out called a ZAR permit, a zero ad permit. These are permits that don't add square footage to a home, so they're internal remodels. And if I can keep them out of the queue, I'm opening up another 50 slots to be even faster. And so these permits, we're experimenting with them right now. But if you call in one of these permits, building inspector is going to come to your home and they're going to issue the building permit on site. It's also a day turnaround. So you call in that inspection, the next day they're going to be out there. And if everything is what you say it is, they are going to issue your building permit and allow you to start working right then. So those are mostly intended for like ADA bathrooms, those kind of remodels that need to happen, and they need to happen fast, which is how it came about. I had a customer come up to me and say that they were in the business of building bathrooms for ADA compliance, and they couldn't wait the 7 days that even that took. So we built this ZAR program for them.
Well, all I can say is thank you and wow, and I hope everyone else does what you're doing. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Great. Thanks, April. This is an amazing report. You have every right to be proud, and your entire team. So thank you for that. I am curious about, and it's great that you were able to participate with the state auditor to review things. I think that is a wonderful asset. Was there anything, could you summarize what you learned through that process?
What we learned is our process is very close to other jurisdictions, and she worked with other jurisdictions. She's from Southwest Washington, so our auditor knows Southwest Washington processes. She says ours were very similar. If we could tighten up and better our timelines, it was going to be less communication through emails and more communication through the software, because land use might have conversations with the applicant and development engineering doesn't know that those conversations happen. And so that the time between those two and what development engineering understands and land use understands is kind of hidden from each other. And so anything that we can do not through email and through a more streamlined process is going to improve our timeline. So we're working on that right now. Land use uses our software different than development engineering, but probably by the end of February, he'll be using it in the same way, which is also going to help our reporting for 5290. I think that might have really been it. That was the biggest takeaway. And it would help with communication as well. But it's going to help with timelines. I'm excited to see what it's going to do to the timelines.
Great. Well, you've had a really positive influence. And I know this was an area, there were chronic complaints about how long things took. I don't hear those anymore. So really good work. And I wonder about participation rates in the learning labs. Are a lot of people tuning in?
I think I had 1,200 views last year total, and that's not considering the people that were doing it live, but it's on YouTube, so we can get those analytics. It was better than I thought it was going to be for our first year and for the minimal amount of outreach that we do.
That's great. And I guess just finally, wetland habitat, and I know that the Barberton area and Curtin Creek, and that was something that was really an egregious case, but I have thought that if we could have intervened earlier in that process, it might have been better. The hope is that it would have been better to prevent a lot of the damage that occurred. So just note for us all to be aware of.
I think that that was a hard one because having the federal or the exemption from our county code, but not federally, was a hard balance for us to walk with PDGR.
I can appreciate that. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much. Okay. This is still community development. Oh, one minute.